Hey everyone, welcome to the One Stop Wrestling YouTube channel once again. Today's guest is originally from Montreal. He's one of the best Canadian wrestlers in over the last 15 years. I'm going to welcome Jeremy Prophet. Thanks for coming on, Jeremy. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. It is always a pleasure to get to go on one of these podcasts, introduce myself to a new audience who might not be familiar with me, bring them up to speed on what I'm all about and why they should be jumping on this bandwagon before it finally reaches the station. And I'm also happy to be able to help out someone like yourself, an enthusiastic podcaster. And I think I'm going to do my best to help you get a better rating than this week's Monday Night Raw, which shouldn't be too hard to do.
I mean, let's be honest, they were on Sci-Fi. It wasn't great, but, you know, we'll let them off this week.
Yeah, we'll do like they say in golf, and we'll give them a mulligan, let's say. But all that to say, you know, Monday Night Raw, they've been underperforming for a while. So what can I say? When a company decides that they want to, you know, hire people who've never done their sport rather than people who've been doing this day in, day out, you know, sometimes you reap what you sow. And it's something that, you know, I don't really get how they decide to suddenly say, hey, we're not going to hire wrestlers anymore. We want people who are outstanding athletes in other sports, as if that's going to, you know, help draw in the business. I don't mean to be controversial right out the gates, but
let's do it. Okay,
it's something that's been bothering me because, you know, when you think about it, it's kind of like if the NFL, or you're from the UK, let's say the Premier League suddenly decided that we're not going to hire footballers anymore. We're going to hire people from other sports. We're going to take bodybuilders and hockey players and pole vaulters, sprinters, and we're going to turn them into footballers. Despite the fact that some people have been doing this for their entire lives through high school, through university, and have dedicated themselves to it. So to me, it's just really backwards that the highest level of professional wrestling no longer wants to hire wrestlers. What can I say? I guess they must know more than we do.
Okay, so let's start it here then. Why do you think a company like WWE have done this? Why do you think that Vince McMahon, the people who have surrounded Vince have went, you know what? Fuck wrestlers. We don't need them. Why do you think that change has been made?
So I think it goes in cycles because a long time ago, they had a lot of success with the OVW class of guys. They were bringing in very few wrestlers. It was a lot of bodies, a lot of bodybuilders, ex-football players, amateur wrestlers. You know, you look at the top class of OVW, I think we all agree. It's Brock Lesnar, Shelton Benjamin, John Cena, Batista, Randy Orton.
Yeah.
Out of all those guys, the only one that you could really say was kind of a wrestler was maybe John Cena, because he had done some independent stuff. Whereas Brock and Shelton, they came up through amateur wrestling. Randy Orton, despite his dad having been a professional wrestler, you know, he was in the military for a while, but, you know, he didn't do any independent wrestling. And Batista, you know, he was pretty much a body guy, just a big, impressive specimen. So I think because of the success of that class and them going on to be Hall of Famers and integral parts of the WWE and wrestling today, they wanted to go back to that. Combined with the fact that I think when Triple H was in charge, he decided to hire a lot of independent wrestlers with big followings, get their fan bases to tune into NXT and eventually WWE once they would reach the main roster. And Vince gave him a chance, but unfortunately, it didn't yield the kind of result they expected. You know, probably because they lost to AEW in the ratings, but also the fact that a lot of these people didn't transition to the main roster with the kind of skill set that Vince McMahon looks for. I'm a firm believer that in the independents, you can get by just kind of being good at one thing. You can be just a good promo. You can be just a good athlete. You know, you can be just a body. But when it comes to WWE main roster, now you're on TV. Now it's a television show. Now you have to be able to, you know, memorize a script. Now you have to be able to do a 2 or 3 segment match and keep it entertaining with a referee with an earpiece telling you what they want to see in the back. You know, you have to be able to deal with the hustle and bustle, you know, the planes, the car rides, the hotels, the being away from home, all those kinds of things. All the kinds of things that a guy like Jeremy Prophet has no problem dealing with because I feel I have that entire skill set and more. But it's also the fact that I'm a lifelong wrestling fan and I've been mentally and physically preparing myself to deal with those kinds of things. So you know, a lot of people, you know, they want some until they got some. So I think that a lot of the guys they hired maybe went in a little naive, thinking that it was going to be an easy transition to the main roster, and then ultimately ended up falling victim to the mind games of the Vince McMahons and the Bruce Pritchards, the writing team, the having to please too many people and losing sight of your own independence and talent, which was actually what got you your foot in the door in the first place. Me, I walk to a bit of a beat of a different drum. I kind of, you know, I don't let people grab the steering wheel of my ship and steer me in any kind of direction. I do my own thing. And I don't try to please people at the expense of what I know I'm good at. I have a very strong moral compass that leads me to my true north. So I think a lot of people kind of crumble under the pressure of the WWE locker room, the environment, having to please too many people. And when you're a blank slate, when you're somebody who's never done wrestling of any kind, they can take you and mold you into whatever they want you to be. You don't know about the universe. And I'm not talking about the WWE universe. I'm talking about the wrestling universe, the history of the business, what's going on outside of the bubble of WWE. And so they can take you and mold you, and they can pretty much rewrite history. They can tell you anything they want, and you don't have the knowledge and know-how to be able to second guess anything that's being told to you. So I think that they're trying to find people that are moldable or brainwashable or, you know, sheep. I'm trying not to be too controversial, but it is something that
No, you go for it, stuff.
But no, I'm still trying to be, you know, as politically correct as possible, because, you know, I don't need to say anything too profane and whatnot to get my point across. But it's just, to me, very asinine that this company has steered away from people who actually want to do this. Like I said, it'd be like telling someone who's playing college football, you know, American college football, and is successful that, hey, you know, you don't qualify to play in the major leagues anymore because you do this sport, and we want people who don't do it, who've never done it, and we can just tell them what to do. That's where we're at right now.
I'm going to give you an example, and you can tell me how you would approach the situation. Now, most recently, I'll use Karrion Kross. So Karrion Kross dominated NXT, destroyed it. Everybody was pumped from coming to the main roster. He looked like he was going to be the next huge thing. He had the look, he had the entrance, he had Scarlett Bordeaux, he could go in the ring. First week on Monday Night Raw, comes out of a completely new image, loses to Jeff Hardy inside the space of, what, say, 2 minutes. Now, I've listened to a couple of interviews with Karrion, and he wanted to play ball. He wanted to do everything that was asked of him in the company. Whose fault would you put that on? Would you put that on WWE's fault for dropping the ball, or do you place some of the blame on Karrion Kross for wanting to play ball so much?
So it's a hard question to answer because I don't have all the facts. You know, do I know if Karrion Kross maybe went and lobbied to the powers that be for how he wants to be presented? Do I know if he went to Vince McMahon and maybe engaged in any kind of a discussion to maybe play him more to his strengths than to how he was presented there, stripping him of a lot of the things that got him over in the first place in NXT? Did he voice these things? I don't know. Would Jeremy Prophet have voiced these things? Most likely, because I think I have a diverse skill set. I can kind of, you know, fit in a lot of different scenarios in terms of my presentation, because I try to be as versatile as possible. However, again, I don't know what circumstances took place beyond that. I don't know if maybe he happened to spill coffee on one of the writers and they decided they want to bury him. You know, we don't know the variables and intangibles that go into these kinds of situations. Do I think that it's ever good to bring in a new character on a show and have him lose right out the gates? No, I don't think that's good. You know, imagine you're watching any kind of, you know, popular TV show, like let's say in Game of Thrones. You know, let's say the first time they introduce Jon Snow, who's going to be the big baby face of the show, we see him getting absolutely obliterated, humiliated, tarred and feathered, and then they're expecting us to maybe believe in this guy in about 2 episodes that he's going to be, you know, the champion of Westeros. It's something that wouldn't make sense. However, in wrestling, we see these kinds of things happen, and I think a lot of it has to do with what goes on outside of the ring. that it becomes,
Yep.
hey, the person is walking around the locker room with a little bit of confidence. We need to break him. We need to humble him. We need to haze him and show him his place in the pecking order. So, you may have been a big shot at NXT. It doesn't mean that you're going to be one here on the main roster. So we have to humble people. And it's a real thing in wrestling at all levels, that sometimes confidence can rub people the wrong way. And, they'll want to crack the whip like any kind of a good slave master. They'll want to crack the whip and they'll want to say, hey, you fall in line. You're not in the minor leagues anymore. So I think that again, going back to our initial discussion, the fear of bringing in a lot of these independent wrestlers is I think that they come in being big fish in small ponds, and that the big company, the big machine that is WWE, they want to break these people and show them that, look, you may have been a leading actor on a stage on Broadway, but now you're in Hollywood. And, if we want you to be a little extra, a little stagehand, then that's what you're going to be, and you're going to like it.
For me personally, I always feel, being like a lifelong fan, that when anybody goes to WWE, Vince does not care about what they have done. They are Vince's product now, and whatever you've done in the past, great, but he doesn't care, and he wants to present you as him to the WWE universe. And it's frustrating for fans, it's frustrating for talent, it's frustrating for everybody. But before we get off this subject, and on to you personally, do you feel that there are any positives in the WWE product at the moment? Anything exciting you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're making more money than they ever have.
Oh, so yeah, absolutely.
Even though as a fan, that may not be the best thing to hear, it's a business. And, to the point that you just made, that Vince McMahon disregards people's accomplishments before getting to his company. I don't think that he totally disregards them, because he hires these people based on their merits outside the company. So he sees something in them. However, it's one thing to be able to be successful outside of WWE, but you're starting all over. You have to come in and be able to show that you can do that now on a world stage, that you can do it at a higher level with a lot more competition. One story that always sticks out to me is with Vince McMahon and AJ Styles. When he first spoke to AJ Styles, I heard AJ talk about it in an interview, and he said to AJ, look, we have a lot of guys here that can do all the same moves you do and even better, which I know for a fact that when AJ first negotiated to go to WWE, I think it was around 2012 when his contract came up with TNA. There was some interest from WWE, but they gave him a very lowball offer. It wasn't a very well-paying offer, and that's why he didn't sign with them. And the reason is they said, well, we have other guys. We have guys like Evan Bourne, it was guys like Seth Rollins who can do all the same moves as AJ Styles. I think they just didn't see the value in AJ, that he brings more than just moves and athleticism. To me, AJ is someone that big inspiration to me. It's a guy of roughly my size, similar athleticism. I think there's a lot of similarities between us and how we perform, but AJ brings more to the table than just a move set. And I think that AJ showed them in WWE once Vince McMahon told him, look, you need something more because everyone here can do your moves. He showed them that he has more to offer, that he can draw money for the biggest company, not just independents or New Japan or TNA. He can do it for the WWE. And I think he's one of the best examples of someone who transitioned from the independent scene to WWE, who is already an established name, but became an even bigger name under the WWE spotlight. So yeah, while Vince McMahon disregards what your accomplishments are before, I don't think that he totally doesn't take them into consideration. But at the end of the day, it's his money. It's his show.
Absolutely.
And like I say
totally agree.
in countless interviews, Vince McMahon has made more money than he can ever spend in whatever little is left of his life. So I don't think he really cares about that. I think he wants a show that's entertaining to him, not a show that's entertaining to the fans, to the guy with the beer belly eating donuts in his basement, watching Raw. He wants a show that's going to entertain himself. And that's why they always say, Vince needs to be a fan of you. Yeah, because, I mean, he's putting on the show right now just to entertain him.
I absolutely 100% agree with you. How do you feel about Bobby Lashley being two-time WWE champion at the moment. I know you're a big personal fan of Bobby. How are you finding his current run?
I think it was long overdue. The first time he won the WWE
couldn't
title.
agree more.
But I will say this. I think that Bobby Lashley is someone who, at the time in 2007, when he had his first WWE title run, he should have got the belt, simply based on the fact that even though he was still new in the company, green by his own admission, there were other people that were given opportunities with the WWE title who had even less skills. And so to me, I think that he should have got it then. Nevertheless, Bobby Lashley did something that not a lot of wrestlers have the courage to do. And that's that he left the WWE, he went and he explored other avenues, went into mixed martial arts, went to the independent scene, where he met someone like me, Jeremy Prophet, and we end up having a match together and spending a weekend on the road. And, Lashley humbled himself and said he wants to improve as a wrestler. Went out, got those skills, showed in TNA that he can be a main event attraction, that he can be a world champion, and that they can center the entire show around him. Came back to WWE even better. And I personally feel that they should have already strapped the rocket to him when he came back to WWE. I remember him doing that program with Roman Reigns. He got the clean win over Roman on pay-per-view, and it was looking as though it was going to be him and Brock Lesnar then. Definitely think he could have been the guy to go and face Lesnar, headline to WrestleMania, win the title, and then boom, they're off to the races with the guy who could carry the company easily through the next, I would say, easily 10 years. However, then we get the hiccups, the ups and downs, the Lashley and his sisters, the Lashley and Leo Rush, and now he's suddenly the new ass man. And, we get all the Lashley and Lana, all these different kinds of things where he always just seemed out of place doing this, because here's this guy who is more or less the full-time equivalent to what Brock Lesnar is on a even less than part-time basis. And he's being used really under his rank and station. So I think that the fact that he tanked through all of that adversity to become the Almighty, and I also feel like seeing the improvement in his, not necessarily his ring work, because his ring work has always been solid, but in his demeanor, his presentation, his viciousness and aggressiveness. I look to like when he had the match with Kofi Kingston, where he demolished him there on pay-per-view. And I feel that that was a turning point for Bobby Lashley, where he really found that, I know it's cliche to say, but that ruthless aggression that Vince McMahon loves. And that's the thing people don't realize is, so many guys come in and they're just doing moves, but there's more to it in wrestling. It's about doing the move, and you have to, make it seem as though you believe in what you're doing, that what you're doing isn't just going to keep your opponent down for a 3 count. It's going to put him in the hospital. It's going to put him in a coma. It's going to, you got to really, as a professional wrestler, when executing a maneuver, it's got to be dangerous looking and vicious. And I think Lashley, while he was a great wrestler and a great technician, he had to tap into that aggressiveness to really sell the Almighty as being the top dog in WWE. And to bring it back, I love Bobby Lashley, that he is someone who is always willing to learn, to humble himself. He got in there and worked with me, and I was fully intent on, I just want to make you look as good as possible, because you're Bobby Lashley. You're a hero to me, for what you've done in wrestling, and for the Black community. And he just totally flipped it on me. Just like, no, man, I want to make you look good. We're here, we're in your country. You're really good. He complimented my work from having seen it the day before, and he's like, I want to make you look good. He even went to the promoter and he lobbied to have me win the match, and at that he didn't have to do that, but that's how selfless Bobby Lashley is. So imagine you have this guy who's now the WWE champion, who is willing to put over anybody on the independents and wanting to help them, showcase them, make them look good. I think it's the perfect combination of the star power and the right attitude to be where he is, and he absolutely deserves it. Love that, man.
So you kind of touched on what Bobby has done in wrestling, but also the Black community. I kind of want to grab your opinion on the Black representation in wrestling now. How do you feel that it has evolved? What do you think is the next step to make it even better? And what do you still see as being the main problems in wrestling at the moment?
So, I mean, it's a problem that's existed for a long time because it shouldn't have taken however many years for there to be the first black WWE champion.
Absolutely
now, I know The Rock had a run with the championship. Rock is half black, he's half Samoan. I often people have said that Rock was maybe just the right shade of black to be a champion. By that definition, I guess I'm just about the right shade of black to be a champion. But the fact that there should have been a full black WWE champion. They seem to have no qualms with putting the world title on people. Booker T, Mark Henry, they had their runs with the world title, which if you want to go through the lineage of the title, Ron Simmons was the actual first black world champion from the WCW title or the NWA title. But there was always this reservation about anyone even getting close to the WWE title. I'll always point to this scramble match that they had. I think it was in 2008. Triple H, MVP, Shelton Benjamin, Brian Kendrick, and Jeff Hardy, if I'm not mistaken. And the idea of the match was that if you score a pinfall or submission on the champion, you become champion, but it's whoever is holding the championship at the end of the match that leaves the match as champion. So obviously Shelton Benjamin and MVP, they were the two black competitors in that match, and they were the only two to not get any kind of a fall that accorded them the WWE title, even for a few seconds. So I always found that suspicious, and I found that there might be other forces at work to prevent a black man from becoming WWE champion. But then finally we saw Kofi Kingston, Big E, and now Bobby Lashley. So I think it's normalizing having a black WWE champion, which would be a step in the right direction. I think I would love to see two black men fighting for the WWE title in a main event of a WrestleMania. We had two women with Sasha and Bianca Belair.
And that was an amazing match.
Yep, indeed. And I think that with women, that's one of the things that surprised me is that WWE has always been willing to have black women at the forefront, whether it be Jacqueline, who was the first women's champion when they reintroduced the title. She defeated Sable and became the first inaugural champion. Jazz had a tremendous run. And now we're seeing, Sasha, Bianca Belair. And I think it's the normalizing of it. It's being able to say that, take color out of the equation. This person is a champion. This person is a champion. This group has been represented at the top of the company. I would love to see, an Asian male champion. I would have loved to see someone like a Shinsuke Nakamura.
It should be Shinsuke Nakamura all day long.
It's I think that, normalizing that anyone of any race, creed, color can be at the top. Because if people in the audience, and this is a big problem, huge problem in Canada where I'm from, absolutely huge, and I'm not shy to say it. You know me, I speak out about everything. But one of the biggest problems in Canada is our history of top-level black wrestlers. That when you look at it, you have Rocky Johnson, arguably and undisputedly the greatest black wrestler in the history of Canada. And you can maybe throw Abdullah the Butcher into that equation. While I'm not a fan of Abdullah's what he has done in the ring and the careers that he's harmed, nonetheless, he's left an impression on the wrestling business and he's achieved his acclaim and notoriety.
Yeah.
But beyond there, when you go down the rankings, I mean, if you were to classify the top 5, definitely the top 10, Jeremy Prophet is in the top 10. And it shouldn't be that way because we should have a richer history of great black wrestlers here in Canada, but unfortunately we don't. Even when you go on shows from coast to coast, the representation is so much smaller than it is in the United States. Again, don't know what it's like in the UK, but definitely when compared to the United States, just across the border, sharing literally the same continent as us, the representation of black wrestlers is so much more. And I believe the issue there is that, a young black child can't go to a show and see somebody in the main event that looks like him or anywhere on the card. They're few and far between. It's a problem of if you don't see yourself represented, why are you going to do it? You're from where in the UK, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm from originally in Glasgow. I now live in Birmingham in England. I moved here about 15 years ago from Scotland.
Oh, okay, I could tell with the accent. I actually there's a lot of Scottish in my background, in my heritage. A lot. My grandmother was her family. They were some of the first generation of Scots to come over from Scotland to Canada.
Okay,
that's on my grandmother's father's side. They were, yeah, very, very much. The family name, in fact, is Scott on that side. That's how Scottish they are. So I have a soft spot for the many Scots in wrestling, the Drew McIntyres, the Nikki Crosses, you know, Killian Dane is with Nikki Cross. He's not actually Scottish, but there's a great number of Scottish wrestlers out there. I always have a bit of a bias to them. Even in the UFC, like Casey O'Neill, who we're going to see fight tomorrow, and Paul Craig, Bear Jew, one of my favorite fighters at light heavyweight. Yeah, so with that said, in talking about this issue, in the UK, for example, so let's say you want to get into sports and you watch the sports that are prevalent in your country. It'll probably be, I would think, football is probably the number one sport in the UK.
Yes, you're correct.
So it would be very unlikely, let's say, that a kid growing up in the UK would want to become a hockey player. I don't even think that England has a hockey team, as far as I know.
We've got a hockey league. It's like we've got like an amateur league. I've been to watch a few games in that, but it's nowhere in comparison to like any other sport in the country. So you're correct on that.
Yeah, exactly. So you know, this is why we don't see any English players in the NHL, which I'm sure there are some very talented players there, but culturally, it's not something that is ingrained in the culture, like let's say in Canada, where hockey is one of our national sports.
Yeah.
And so young kids grow up here, they want to play hockey. Now, hockey is a very whitewashed sport too. Take it from someone, I played 15 years of hockey myself. It's a very whitewashed sport. I didn't see anyone of any color on any team I was on or on any opposing team in 15 years of playing. I was the only one. And so it's the same thing. When you watch the sport as a young child, you want to see people who relate to you, whether that's through their actions or through their appearance. But unfortunately, in Canada, you're not seeing Black wrestlers on independent shows. That you're not seeing that many. And the ones that are on there, they're maybe not being featured in the top spots and whatnot. There are a few exceptions here and there, and I fight that fight every time I'm on a show. It's like I tell people, I'm not just there to wrestle, earn a paycheck, and maybe advance my career. I'm here to inspire. I'm here to help other people be able to see that someone that looks like this can be the top performer. And so without there being the representation on shows, it's not going to influence the next generation. And I think that that's a very big problem in wrestling in Canada, and one that I'm working very hard to change, because it shouldn't be that way. And, you know, I can only speak to what I am, but when it comes down to it, there should be more Asian wrestlers. There should be more Indigenous wrestlers. There should be so much more representation. No sport should be whitewashed. No sport should be just only people who look like this do this, whether it be professional wrestling, whether it be golf, tennis, croquet, football, American football, anything like that. People should see representation and be able to gravitate towards that.
Absolutely, 1,000,000% agree with you. It is nice to see more in WWE, and obviously, like Moose being Impact champion, it still has a long ways to go, as you say. But hopefully, the world can keep progressing, and people like yourself can keep pushing for that representation where you are. It's great to see things going in that direction.
And if I could add to that, I know that a lot of people talk about the lack of main event talent, Black talent in a company like AEW, for example. And I feel that there are quite a few people there that, you know, they have the ability to be main eventers. They can do it eventually. And I think that it will happen. But I also think that overall in wrestling, there's a bit of an issue with scouting, that I think that from all the companies, the scouting is very American central. A lot of the talents that are getting jobs, most of the talents are getting hired out of the United States, simply because I think the main companies are American. There's a bit of a transitional assistance in having an NXT UK stationed in the UK, where they can help talents get seen and get exposure under the WWE banner while wrestling in their country. But there really should be a system where there's better scouting for all other countries, for Canada, of course, for other parts of Europe, for South America, for Asia. There should be the same type of system. Unfortunately, a lot of companies are resorting to hiring more or less the talent that is local to them in the United States, instead of actually actively scouting who is the best wrestler in South America, who are the best wrestlers in Canada, who are the best wrestlers in Africa, who are the best wrestlers in Scandinavia, in all these other parts of the world, and bringing them in, doing what actual professional sports teams do when they scout for the best talent in their specific sport. And I think that if they were to look to Canada, I'd be far up that list. I think that, hey, you wouldn't have to look far for that main eventer of color that checks all the boxes, that can talk, that has the body of work, most importantly, and can get it all done. I think I'm the guy they're looking for, and I dare anyone to dispute that, because quite frankly, and I'm not being cocky or braggadocious here, but I have yet to meet my equal in anyone that I've performed with, against, seen in a locker. I have yet to meet my equal in terms of all the abilities and all the attributes that I bring to the sport of professional wrestling.
Right. So over the last week, I have spoken to a couple of independent wrestlers being wrestling in Canada, who have all said the exact same thing. And I want to get your opinion, because I want to see if you say the same thing. Now, obviously, wrestling history is littered with Canadians, and they've been some of the best wrestlers in the world. But it's not easy to get recognized in Canada or get found. It's very difficult to break out of Canada. Why do you think that is?
It's actually a lot simpler than you think. So when you look at anyone who makes it anywhere these days, not taking into account these athletes who failed in other sports that WWE decides to give a scholarship to, but independent wrestlers, it all comes down to the buzz that you generate, the fan base, the fact that someone can scroll a Twitter feed and see your name several times, or see a couple of your GIFs, or these kinds of things. Exposure is the main thing. We don't have the same exposure in Canada that anyone does on the American independent scene, that even people do in, let's say, Japan or in Mexico, where they actually have top-level companies, AAA and CMLL, where you can earn your living, perform professionally, and companies with a rich lineage and history that has been followed and produced stars for years and years. We don't have that in Canada. Not only that, but a lot of people are under the impression that Canada is like the United States in terms of their scene, almost like we're this one big conglomerate from California all the way up to Maine, and everything horizontal and vertically in between. But it's not, because we have a border separating us. So I think that a lot of people feel that if you're not wrestling in the PWGs and the GCWs and any other of the ABC alphabet soup companies out there that have a lot of fan base and visibility, they just feel like you're not that good. You're not good enough to be there. The thing is if I had it my way, I would be wrestling in the United States every week. I've had promoters offer to fly me in, offer to pay me tremendous amounts, all of these things that I've had to refuse, because we cannot legally go wrestle in the United States. And, you know, people can send me messages and all the hate mail they want. That's fine. People can say all these things to not try and intimidate me, to try to not say these things, but it's the truth. By definition, if we go to wrestle in any of those companies, even if we do it free of charge, we're still by definition breaking the law, because we're taking a job away from an American citizen who could have potentially had that spot. So people don't realize there are a lot of legal ramifications and criminal ramifications that go into that. We could easily get banned for 5 years simply by going and trying to practice our sport, which is ridiculous, because when it comes down to it, if you're an amateur, let's say even like an amateur martial arts practitioner, like a taekwondo or a karate fighter, you can go and do tournaments and compete against people from other countries legally, anywhere in the United States. But as a professional wrestler, I think because we're entertainment, you need to have a proper entertainer's visa, which takes loads of paperwork, takes, you know, thousands of dollars. And then also, most importantly, it takes proofs that you're an exceptional talent and a company to endorse you. So far, the only companies I know of that can endorse people for work visas, WWE, Impact, AEW, possibly the NWA, but I've yet to see proof of that. So when it comes down to it, anyone who goes there is working illegally. And you look at all the people that have been hired, almost all the Canadians, It's people who have built their names, not in Canada, but in the United States, wrestling for these companies, wrestling illegally. And, it blows my mind that when you put it in layman's terms for people to understand, it's the equivalent of these big companies, huge companies, Fortune 500 billion-dollar companies saying, well, if you want to work for us, you have to go and do some illegal work. You got to do illegal work on the American independent scene that you're not legally allowed to be there, build up a bit of a name and a reputation for yourself, and maybe we'll consider hiring you to do some legal work for us. Now, to me, that's just mind-blowing. That's just,
it absolutely is.
It's as mentally malnourished a way of thinking as anything, but that's unfortunately the uphill battle that we face. And all the ones who made it, it's not because they did fantastic matches in Canada.
Yeah,
it's because of what they did in the States. And so people have this backwards view that because we're not in these big companies, it's because we don't want it bad enough. We're not good enough to be there. And it's like, hey, look at my body of work. I could pretty much write my own ticket to be anywhere. There's some guys who can do 1/10 of the things I do that are making six figures just off of that. And I can do that and then some. It's really a case of, why take the risk of doing something illegal? Why should it have to be that way? That's been my crusade.
Now, don't quote me on this. I read a few years ago that ELP found him in that kind of situation, and he was banned, I think, for 5 years from the States. I'm not sure how true that is, but that's how I first found out about these kind of issues.
Who is this person?
ELP.
Where are they?
El Phantasmo.
Oh, El Phantasmo.
I think he ran into some kind of visa issues several years ago.
It's possible. It's very possible. I mean, it
absolutely blows my mind.
This is what all Canadians have to face, and people don't realize just how good the talent is here in Canada. That we have great talent. We have talent that could blow main eventers on TV out of the water. It's like I always say, when it comes down to me, my competition isn't here locally. My competition are the people who are on TVs and main events. My competition are the Hangman Pages, the Roman Reigns, these kind of people, because put my skill set up against them. And I do believe that for everything they do better than me, I do a hell of a lot better than they do. And yeah, it may not seem like something people will digest easily because they're there and I'm here, but that's never been a gauge of talent, in my opinion. Just because somebody has been afforded more opportunities, somebody has benefited from having more white privilege, that doesn't mean that that person is actually objectively better when you break it down to the bare bones of actual talent and what the person brings to the table.
Absolutely. So for you personally, what's the next step for Canadian wrestling? How do you get that more exposure the way everything is set up at the moment?
To me, you gotta keep making noise about it. You gotta keep talking about it. You gotta keep throwing it in people's faces and enlightening the right people. Because the more the movement takes place, the more it spreads, the more the word gets out there, and fans can understand that there's this great injustice happening, and not just dismiss it as, well, that's the way it's always been, so that's the way it's going to be. I mean, imagine people said that about slavery. That's just the way it is. That's just the way it's going to be. Or if they said it about the segregation in sports, like how black players weren't allowed to play in the major leagues and weren't offered the same exact opportunities to be able to get jobs and succeed and create winning teams. If people just turned a blind eye and said, well, that's just the way it is, deal with it, there would be no progress. So for me, it's about waking up every day, maximizing the 24 hours in a day to use everything at my disposal to fight this tooth and nail aggressively, offensively, and without remorse. That every waking moment, this is the thing that I work towards, whether people want to support me or not. I'm about expressing myself, and it's not about pleasing people. It's not about making popular decisions. It's about making the right decisions, whether people like it or not, and just mowing over anything in my path. So yeah, I'm the most outspoken. I'm the most aggressive about it. And it's make it or die trying. That's what it comes down to. I take everything I do very seriously. I'm a very serious, meticulous person. And I'm a very aggressive person. But aggressive for the things that I believe in, because change can only come about by dealing with these issues head on, fighting every battle, and tanking through all adversity. So when it comes to getting Canadians recognized, I encourage them to step up, mobilize, make themselves be heard, make sure that, no day goes by where you're not using the platforms that you're given, whether it be on a podcast like this, whether it be getting, 15 to 20 minutes in a ring on a show, to make sure that you do the very best you can to make people realize we have a great scene here and we're not being treated on that same equal playing field. And yeah, I mean, like I've written letters, I've used my podcast, Jofo in the Ring, to talk to great Canadians like Lance Storm, Santino Marella, TJ Wilson, all these people who all acknowledge that there is this issue that makes it harder for Canadians. And it's getting all these people on board. I would say the next immediate step, and one of the things I'm most proud of, is the fact that coming up this year, there's a competition that's going to be taking place. It's called Wrestling Academy. And a lot of people think I'm the brainchild behind this, and I'm not. It's just a case of good timing, where Jacques Rougeau, also known as the Mountie, decided that he's going to do this competition to help give back to Canadian wrestlers who haven't had these opportunities. And I'll admit, Jacques approached me about this, and initially it was just a contest. It was just, we're going to do this, we're going to put it on TV, and we're going to highlight great wrestlers from around the country with a $5,000 prize for each of them. And I explained to him, I said, look, that's great, and it's going to be good because maybe this will give us exposure to be able to help us get further, help the American companies see us and realize, hey, we can't bring these guys in to try them out because even that would be illegal. We're not going to pay the $2 to 25 grand to hire them without really knowing. But now we're going to be able to watch this, see them, scout the talent, and know what we're investing in by bringing them. So it'll help to create jobs and create opportunities. Lo and behold, somewhere along the lines, and to this day, I still don't know how it happened, but somewhere along the lines, the Nightmare Factory took interest. I saw
QT Marshall on Twitter.
Exactly. QT Marshall stepped up and said he's going to monitor this. He's going to follow the competition. He's going to come in himself as a guest judge for one of the episodes of the competition, and has now offered a 3-month scholarship to all 4 winners from the competition, of which I'm going to be one of them. God is my witness. Barring anything that can go wrong, because let's face it, anyone can slip and blow out their knee or can break their neck and end up in a wheelchair for the rest of their life. There are things that could go wrong. I could go on a drive later and someone could sideswipe me, and that's the end of the legend of Jeremy Prophet. But barring any major hiccup along those lines, I will win this competition. I will, simply because I've been training for this a lot longer than the other people in it. No disrespect to them, but you see people in this competition who are out of shape. You see people in this competition who don't have the athleticism. You see people who don't have the speaking ability to keep an audience engaged, whether on a podcast or in front of an arena full of thousands of people, or just in front of the camera by itself, and able to deliver that same kind of level of entertainment. You see people who are just happy to be there, people who still have a long way to learn. And I believe that the people, when they vote, because it's a fan vote, I don't think the people want to send a rookie to the Nightmare Factory. I think they want to send somebody there that can go and give Hangman Page and the Young Bucks and MJF and CM Punk and Bryan Danielson, give them a run for their money. Someone who can walk in as a totally unknown and then just make the whole wrestling business go, wow, we really should have been scouting Canada, because how could we have missed someone like this? How could this have gone unnoticed for 16 years? It doesn't make sense. So I think that the people will want to send the best. They'll want to send someone who's going to go there and beat the brakes off of every single one of those guys, embarrass them, make them look foolish, and be like, you know what? You guys got the easy path. I took the long path, but now it's my time to represent. I ain't going to let any of you, no matter how many dollars you have in your bank account, no matter how many NFTs you're on, no matter how many big companies have given you way too much TV time, I'm the guy who's going to go in there and show them that you can still be the best in the world without ever having to leave your country, and can do that on the world stage. So I do think that people will rally behind my cause, and I'm pretty damn sure I'm winning it. It's not a case of confidence. It's a case of when you work hard at something, when you fine tune your skills, you're not going to let a bunch of amateur part-time weekend warriors come in and take that away from you. So they're going to try and take that away from me. They're going to have to try to pry it out of my cold, dead hands.
So if you win this competition, you go on to the 12 weeks scholarship at the Nightmare Academy.
Yeah.
Where would you see that accomplishment rank in your career?
it would be the biggest. When it comes down to it, you're only as good as your last match. So it's what have you done lately? And so, yeah, I do want success. I am hungry for success. I am willing to, I'm willing to do everything it takes by any means necessary to make it to the top. I don't care whose throat I have to slit. I don't care who I have to push over the edge of the cliff. This is what I want, and I'm willing to fight for it. I've been fighting for it forever. I don't dress for the job I have. I dress for the job I want. So I live day in, day out like I'm already there. I make the sacrifices in the gym, in the ring, in what I eat and what I don't eat. I do all the things right to be able to show up on a day's notice. Like I always say, I'm ready yesterday. I don't need to go and do 100 push-ups and 100 sit-ups and whip myself into shape. No, I stay in shape. I'm ready for that opportunity. I've been ready for that opportunity for years now. It's just been denied to me for geographic reasons, in my opinion. But when it comes down to it, I'm ready. And I don't think the rest of the competition is ready. And I'll gladly tell them to their faces, if they got issues with that, then hey, we can meet in the parking lot before the show and we can settle it like men. That's fine by me too. But when it comes down to it, I'm ready for this. And I'm not going to let anything stand in my way, plain and simple.
I think one of the biggest problems for me is, so I am at home, I've got nothing to do, I want to watch some wrestling. So I've got a couple of choices. I can put the WWE Network on, or I can put something like Fight TV on. Now, I put Fight TV on, I can watch all these great promotions from America. I can watch these promotions from Japan. I can watch these promotions from Mexico. I can watch these promotions from Australia. But why can't I watch these promotions from Canada? Even on like global platforms that are showcasing the best wrestling in the world, a country that's so rich with wrestling history still isn't showcased on those major platforms, which I think is one of the biggest crimes of professional wrestling.
Again, I can only theorize why that is. I don't think that it's necessarily that a lot of those networks don't want to carry Canadian content. I don't think they're discriminating against Canadians. However, I think that a lot of Canadian promoters are more concerned with what is going to put immediate money in their pocket rather than what is going to give their company the exposure that will help to generate bigger long-term revenue. And so I think that a lot of promoters lose sight on the true value of being able to get their product on an international broadcaster, whether it be like a IWTV or whether it be on fight channels. One of the companies that I wrestle for, the IWS, International Wrestling Syndicate, they're actually on the Fight Network. I think they're on the UK one as well. They're on Fight Network USA and here in Canada. So they have a pretty solid TV deal. In fact, they share the same network with Impact Wrestling here in Canada, which is Fight Network. So that's a pretty good deal for them. And they have a very talented roster as well. So you can see some good Canadian wrestling there. But yeah, a lot of companies, like I say, I think that they're just looking at the small picture. They just want to be able to pay their bills, and they don't really care about long term. I think that the problem with a lot of independent wrestlers and why I feel I'm different is that I feel a lot of them give up on their dreams. They feel that it's too much work to be able to make it. It's too, and I mean, it is like, I mean, even just going and doing an interview like this, it takes a level of work and dedication that a lot of people don't have. They don't have that get up and go. They don't have the desire to, oh, well, I have to be nice and groomed. I got to do my beard. I got to do my hair. I got to wear something nice. I got to make sure the background is on point. I got to invest all these different little attribute points and time and effort into being as meticulously perfect as possible. And I think that reflects on their wrestling as well. Now, I'm not here to just, thrash people in wrestling and whatnot, but when it comes down to it, if you're not taking care of your body, if you're not taking care of, your ring gear, you're not taking care of what you do in a ring, being able to do more than just the same moves in the same order every single match, being able to tell different stories, being able to entertain the people, whether it be on an 1.5-hour podcast, whether it be in just a promo with the camera rolling, no one there to give you any cues to feed off of, whether it be going out to the ring, scripted or unscripted, and being able to keep those people entertained for hours on end. If you're not fine-tuning all of these skills, then you're not putting everything in your favor. You're leaving things to chance and just hoping. So when it comes down to it, I don't see myself as someone that falls into that category. I'm not the kid in running shoes with a beer belly, wrestling and, doing the same moves, the same match over and over. That's not me. I'm the complete polar opposite of that. And so I've worked very hard to differentiate myself, to have all these skills, because I know that call will come someday. And whether people want to support me or not, that's fine by me. I don't need the people's support. I'm a one-man army on my own. I'm a force of nature. Put me in front of a microphone, put me in a ring in front of a crowd. I am a force of nature, and you cannot not notice me. I could sit across from you, have a conversation, and I know you're probably thinking it right now. You're thinking, man, this guy's got something special to him. I know that. And I think my self-awareness makes me more deadly than anybody else. I just wish that my fellow wrestlers, countrymen here would all step up and say, you know what, we're going to train for the job we want rather than training for the job that we have and accepting our place in this antiquated caste system that has become professional wrestling in Canada.
Absolutely, 100% agree. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have some fun.
Aren't we already?
This is so much fun, but we're going to have even more fun because we are going to allow fans to get to know you a little bit better and how you originally became a fan of professional wrestling in the first place. So I have got some questions. Some are more difficult than others, but all are fun. So the first question is, what is the first wrestling show you remember watching on television?
I remember it like it was yesterday. It was WWF Superstars, Bret the Hitman Hart against Blake Beverly. It was the opening match. Remember it like it was yesterday, still have it on VHS. And it's like I always say, I'm really thankful that the first match I saw involved Bret Hart, because maybe had it been, let's say, I don't know, Doink the Clown against Bastion Booger, I might have thought, hey, this wrestling stuff is whack. It's not for me. I'm gonna become a martial artist instead. I'm gonna become a Power Ranger. I'm gonna, whatever it was that was interesting me at the time when I was younger. But I saw a great wrestling match. It made me want to watch more, and I never stopped watching since then. I'm still as big of a fan as I was, and people don't realize this and wanting to get to know me. But I think one of the reasons why I am as good as I am in wrestling is because I was an extremely big wrestling fan. I was the biggest wrestling fan I knew. Oftentimes traveled hours just to go to pay-per-views in the United States. Traveled 16 hours to go to North Carolina to watch Vengeance in 2007. Traveled 12 hours to go to Chicago to watch I think it was Unforgiven in Chicago around the same time. I was doing big time road trips to see WWE events, going to the hotels to meet the wrestlers, pick their brains, find out, any little thing I could that helped me advance my career, my knowledge. I was a very, and am still a very big wrestling fan. And I think that I weaponize that today, because nowadays, a lot of the people that I looked up to are becoming more of my contemporaries and people that I'll have to go up against. So I think that my knowledge of who they are, what they've done, what their strengths and weaknesses are, give me a bit of an edge over a lot of these people.
Now, you mentioned something like young viewers in their 20s or younger might not know VHS. Please tell me that you still have kept all your VHS tapes. I would love to know that you still have them all.
Oh, absolutely. Why get rid of that? It's going to be a commodity one day. There's going to be footage that will be on VHS that will be the only way of seeing it. Now with everything becoming digital, the people who control that footage can edit it and modify it in any way. So the only true versions of it will be on VHS. I actually think, hey, you want an investment tip? I wouldn't be surprised if anything related to VHS, maybe those devices that have like the TV with the VHS built into it, those will probably skyrocket in value. That'll probably be a big time eBay item in the near future. So if you have one of those, hang on to it. You might be able to fetch yourself a pretty penny for it.
I still have one of those, like the TV and video combos.
Keep it. It might fetch you a pretty penny on eBay in the future.
Did you have a tape trade back in the day?
No, not to a greater degree. Fortunately, when I started wrestling, I had one of my mentors who he tape traded, and I kind of got the hand-me-downs from the tape trades. So he would get them, he would pass them on to me, and then I would watch them. I would actually make my own versions of it because I had the tape converter, and then I would give that back to him, and he would send it along. So while I never actually made the trades myself, I was a beneficiary of it.
That's so cool. So in your collection, like VHS, DVDs and that, what is your most prized possession that you own?
I did actually come into acquiring a decent number of Coliseum home videos from the early 90s, a lot of which had exclusive matches, which I think even some of them might not have found their way onto the WWE network yet. And certainly if they did, they probably would be modified, different commentary, entrances, entrance music modified and whatnot. But yeah, there was actually someone who had quite an archive of it, and they decided to just give it all away. I happened to know them through a friend of a friend and managed to pick up, yeah, like a good amount of old Coliseum home videos. I'd say somewhere in the range of around 70 to 80 of them, and got them for about $2 a piece, which to me it was well worth it, because watching those was a lot of fun. Even just putting them on, inviting over some of the guys that I was training with at the time, and being like, let's watch this. Let's watch some old Jacques Rougeau matches that are on here, since he was training us, and just watching it and laughing. And lo and behold, now I'm blessed to be doing Jofo in the Ring and getting to actually interview a lot of these guys. And I get to bring up a lot of these matches that I saw, which matches that were taking place when I was, before I was even a fan. But that's what we had to do back then. Like, we're going back to when I started my training, which was 2003, 2004, when YouTube wasn't as strong as it is now. Nope. The WWE network certainly didn't exist. And so getting my hands on this kind of old footage with some, pay-per-views mixed in there, stuff that predates, not necessarily my birth, but I mean, I'd have been like 2 or 3 years old. So getting my hands on that was great, and great to learn from too. And just it felt like owning a piece of history. I saw that it should be in a Smithsonian, or sorry, I wish I had a reference there that was more culturally relevant to your part of the world.
No, it's absolutely fine, man.
But
I know that you're obviously you are a big DVD and video collector and that, so I thought I would show you my prized DVD, which took me several years to get. Wasn't easy to hunt down. I hope you can actually see this. This took me so long. And I don't know if you can see the writing on Terry Funk. This is actually signed by Mick Foley.
Oh, amazing.
I caught Mick when he was doing his UK tour for the stand-up comedy. And even Mick had said he'd only ever seen a handful of these at the time. So I feel quite lucky to actually have this and have it signed by him.
Amazing, yeah. And I had the chance to meet Mick Foley on 2 occasions. I did an interview with him back when I hosted a radio wrestling show. I forget around when that was. I think it was maybe around 2010 or so, or 2011. I had him in studio here on TSN Radio, which is the Canadian equivalent of ESPN. We had him in studio. Great guy. He was there to promote one of his comedy shows. And then I would end up meeting him a few years later. We were on a show together in Rhode Island. I think it was in Providence. It may not have been Providence, but it was definitely in Rhode Island for a company called XWA out of Rhode Island. The company treated me very well. And it was one of those things where I didn't want to bother Mick, but it just so happened that we were both at the curtain watching the show, because I usually like to watch every show that I'm on. Usually when I'm later in the show, I like to see what happens early on, so that way we don't repeat anything, and I get a sense of what the audience wants to see that night. And he just happened to be behind me. I didn't even know he was there for the first couple of minutes, and then we started talking, struck up a great conversation. And I've always been a fan of Mick Foley's too. The stuff that he would do in a ring, the willingness that he had to sacrifice his health and well-being to make sure that the people went home getting their money's worth was something that I'm very big on. Is that I want every person who sees me in action to go home feeling they got their money's worth. I don't want to ever take a day off. I don't want anyone to ever be able to say, well, Jeremy Prophet, it wasn't what I expected when he was in there performing. So I'm very big on giving the people what they want and making sure they leave happy. And I think Mick Foley was a guy who may not have been the most technical, the most athletic, but always knew how to put his body on the line to make sure that people remembered what he did. So I have a tremendous respect for him. Plus, I think Mankind was one of the greatest characters in the history of professional wrestling.
Absolutely. And not only just Mankind, how he could bring Cactus Jack to life, how he could bring Dude Love. I mean, I know people look back on Dude Love with different memories, but I was all in, and Mick will always be one of the most underrated wrestlers. I'm so happy he still got his world championship run. I still don't feel he ever got his main event moment he truly deserved.
He, he was so dynamic, and I think the WWE didn't realize, even at the time, how good of a performer Mick Foley was. That if you think about his entire run, the two versions of the Mankind character, I love the Mankind character. I know people talk about The Undertaker as being one of the greatest characters. I think Mankind is up there. And I mean the entirety of Mankind, from the deranged, psychotic Mankind to the lighthearted, funnier Mankind, even the corporate Mankind in the middle before Vince McMahon turned on him at the Deadly Game. I think just the range shown in that character is incredible. And then when you throw in Dude Love and how Dude Love was the childhood persona of Mick Foley that then teamed up with Austin, and then corporate Dude Love, which I don't think corporate Dude Love gets enough love for how good that run was at a time where they really needed a main event heel. And then, Cactus Jack, which is ironic that I actually got to see Mick Foley perform live. I think I never got to see him as Dude Love, but I did get to see him as Mankind and as Cactus Jack. Mankind when he wrestled Kane, the night of the Montreal Screwjob, which I think was Kane's debut match. And then I got to see him work a house show against Billy Gunn here in Montreal as Cactus Jack, and when he was teaming with Terry Funk as Chainsaw Charlie.
Yeah.
I also got to see him in North Carolina at that same Vengeance I referenced earlier, when he just wrestled as Mick Foley against Ric Flair. But again, 3 different stages.
I remember that match.
Yeah, and it was a great match. Outstanding. And always had a soft spot for Mick Foley. I think he's an exceptional talent, and just I love how good his character personification was, playing all those different variations of those 3 characters, and even as himself. Again, I can't say enough good about Mick Foley. Really one of my favorites when I was watching as a young child.
I'll give you an example that shows Mick's range, and I truly feel is one of the greatest moments in Raw history. It was that night at Madison Square Gardens in a street fight with Triple H, and Mankind came on the Titantron and said that he couldn't fight Triple H, but he knew someone who did. And then on came Dude Love, and you had the 2 of them on the screen, and Dude Love says, "Oh, no, I can't do it, but we know someone." And it was the first time that you saw Cactus in the WWF. Now, being in the UK, I had very little access to WCW, so unless I wanted to watch in German, and watching people do promos in German was not fun at 2 o'clock on a Friday night. So I had no idea who Cactus Jack was. But Mick Foley let me know that night that that persona he was coming out as was dangerous and was going to half kill Hunter in that ring.
Yep.
And I think that shows you how underrated Mick is.
Yeah, we could do an entire podcast just on his entire career and the great stuff that he did. And no matter which character he did, I feel he put his all into it. I'm a big fan of versatility. Like I always say, I think my biggest strength in wrestling is how eclectic I am. That you need somebody for any situation. Like when I find myself in multi-man matches, I love it because my opponents, they know I can do anything. You need a guy to do a big dive onto the pile, that's me. You need a guy to take a big bump in the mat, that's me. You need a guy to do a big power move on 2 guys at the same time, it's me. A guy like Keith Lee will call himself limitless. I feel I as well am limitless in what I can do. And I love that Mick Foley, he had great versatility in the character, but also in the ring, that he would be willing to take whatever bump necessary to help the match. Like when he did the infamous Hell in the Cell and knew that The Undertaker was in rough shape for that match, barely able to even do it because of his injuries that he had. And he managed to take a limited Undertaker and do everything in his power to make that match one of the most memorable matches in history. Like I know people who weren't even alive at that time and they talk about it because they've seen the footage, and they say like, oh yeah, when he got thrown off the cell. And some of them, you know, they're casual wrestling fans. Some of them swear he died that night. Some of them, they talk about it and they say, oh yeah, when he threw him off the cell and he died, and they stretched him out, he was dead. Wasn't that a shit? And they don't obviously know the full story, but I think that speaks to his level of willingness to provide what the match is missing so that the people don't go home empty-handed. Again, like I said, we could do an entire podcast on. I got nothing but love for Mick Foley, and I would say, you know,
I totally agree with you.
You know, Craig, you never know who's watching, and I would say this: if somehow this clip, you know, we could maybe tag Mick Foley in it, and he may be willing to come on either your show or my show, Jofo in the Ring, and do a quick interview with us. I would love to.
I mean, I am totally. I will do a whole series on Mick Foley. Yeah, whatever we want to do in Mick Foley, I am so totally down for it. Let's do it at some point.
So there we go, Mick. If you're listening, if you see this clip, if you would want to come on to either of our shows, or we could even co-do it, you know, the two of us together and interview, we would love to do that, Mick. Make it happen for two of your biggest fans.
Absolutely. So the next question, do you remember the first wrestling show you ever attended in person?
Absolutely. I talked about it on another podcast that I did with George. Also,
absolutely amazing. I have nothing but love for George, so I'm just going to give George a shout out. I know he's really looking forward to watching this. He's a huge fan of yours.
It was. I remember the first show I ever attended. It must have been 1990. It was either 94 or 95, and it was at the Montreal Forum. It's an arena that no longer exists. Well, they converted it into a shopping center, but it was at the Montreal Forum where the Montreal Canadiens used to play. And if I'm not mistaken, it was headlined by a match between Yokozuna and The Undertaker. But why I remember it most was not because of the main event. It was because of the opening match. So literally the first match that I saw live, which was a match between Bastion Booger and Owen Hart.
Oh,
and
man.
This is why I say I have this special connection with the Harts, because the first match I ever saw on TV was Bret Hart and Blake Beverly. First match I ever saw live was Owen Hart and Bastion Booger. And seeing that match, I'll never forget, seeing just the aesthetic of how big, to me, Bastion Booger was one of the most terrifying wrestlers, because to me as a kid, I saw him and I'm like, you know, if this guy sits on me, which that was his finisher, he would sit on his opponent, I felt like I would die. And so seeing Owen, who was a lot smaller, I did not believe Owen stood any chance of beating him. Sure enough, what a great match, what a great story, and Owen came away with the victory, which is one of the reasons why I was always a fan of Owen Hart. You know, I don't want to be that guy to say it, but I'll say it. In my opinion, Owen was actually a more skilled, more talented wrestler than Bret Hart. I feel Owen was the complete package. He was, you know, the wrestling, and not just the technical wrestling, but the athleticism, the aerial ability, and on the mic, he could be entertaining and funny just as much as he could be serious and threatening. I think he had that edge on Bret in terms of the mic skills that he had as well. Owen was always entertaining. You would never be left indifferent by anything that Owen Hart did. So yeah, I've always loved the Harts, not just because they're Canadian. That was always a plus, but you know, just loved them. Had that special connection to seeing both in the first match I saw on television and the first match that I saw live. And it was a great show. I mean, the Quebecers wrestled the Steiner brothers on that show. One of my favorite moments from that show, it doesn't get talked about enough, because I think only the people there saw it because it was a house show, but there was originally supposed to be a match between Doink the Clown and Jerry the King Lawler. And I think this was at the time where Jerry Lawler had the rape or sexual assault allegations against him. So they pulled him from television. And the match, instead of being Doink and Jerry Lawler, it became Doink against Shawn Michaels. And,
oh my God.
And if people think Shawn Michaels' heat in Montreal started with the screw job, I think Shawn, it might have started at this house show, because Shawn, on his way to the ring, I'll never forget this, he's on his way to the ring. Also remember the fact that they didn't have his music. He came out to Jerry Lawler's music, because I guess it was a last second thing to pull Lawler because of the allegations. Shawn's making his way to the ring, and a fan just full on throws a beer in his face, doused him. It hit him and it splattered everywhere. And Shawn jumped into the audience and lunged at the fan. He jumped over the rail and grabbed the guy, and then security jumped in. And I remember watching that, and the person beside me, who was a bit of a smarter fan, they were like, "Oh, this is real. This isn't part of the show." And then like I turned and I asked my father, I'm like, "Is this not part of the show?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't know. Everything's usually planned. This is probably part of the show." But now looking back at it, I'm like, this was a real incident. This was a big thing that happened there, where the fan threw the beer on Sean. Sean lunged out. I mean, Sean went into the second row. This guy was not the first person. He was like in the second row, and Sean went at him. Like 8 or 9 security guards came out. They pulled it apart, and Sean was just frustrated for the entirety of that match, which I think ended in a count out or disqualification. But just Sean in Montreal, there's I would say a love-hate relationship, but it's more of a hate-hate relationship. But that was the moment that most stood out to me at that show.
Oh man, because see, the things that suck about when we went to wrestling shows when we were young, no one had, well, it's a bit of a blessing and not a blessing. No one had mobile phones, so you couldn't record any of this footage.
Yeah.
But also, it kind of made the shows more exciting, because I don't know about you, when I watch modern day Raws or Dynamite, these kind of big shows, I see less and less crowd signs. I see more and more.
Yeah.
So it's both a blessing and a disguise. But I would love to have seen that footage. Somehow.
Yes. I think that there were some people. I saw some footage came out from some house shows here, and from other places. So I think maybe there was like a traveling group that would. I think it was the same people, because there were house shows that were done in different areas, but it's the same uploader. And I found some on YouTube, and I think I found some of some house shows here. I don't know if that one was on there. I don't think that one was on there. But I think that there might be some people who have that, and they're just waiting to be able to put it out there, because at the time, yeah, it was illegal to do that. So even the curtain call at Madison Square Garden, they put that footage out, but they kind of got WWE's blessing to do that. But there's a lot more of it out there, and I think that WWE also has an archive. If I'm not mistaken, they have at least one camera at every house show just to do a report back to the office. So who knows? Maybe that footage might get unearthed one day. Maybe they'll need it for a documentary that they do on somebody. But yeah, those were the good old days. And the sad thing that you mentioned there about how fans don't have signs anymore, it is sad to see, because I think that was one of the great things about that time period, because you could express yourself, and it was encouraged to go to the show and express yourself. Say who you like, say who you don't like. Nowadays, you bring a sign to a show, and it's this wrestler is ugly, or this wrestler is fat, or whatever. Recently there was a thing where I saw people on the internet, and I don't want to get too controversial, but there was that incident on Dynamite where a fan yelled something at Jon Moxley, and
oh yeah, I watched that. Yeah.
And I mean, I found it funny how he responded and whatnot. But what I didn't like is people were saying, "Oh, that fan should have been kicked out for saying that." And I'm like, we can't bring wrestling to a point where a fan expresses themselves. They say something to a wrestler that they don't like. And again, it wasn't like they said something racist or homophobic or anything like that. I think the guy just said, get that trash out of here or something like that. You can't be throwing people out for doing that. That's what wrestling's been built on. It's been built on expressing yourself. Imagine they wanted to throw out every fan that decided to boo Cody Rhodes or to boo John Cena, or yell mean things at them. It's like, look, you gotta give people the right to express themselves when they pay their money, so long as it's not saying something that's racist, homophobic, anything along those.
I totally agree. So I think there personally has to be a line. So obviously, I think a couple weeks prior to that, someone was removed for having a derogatory sign to Nyla Rose. Now that person needs to be gone. In my opinion, that person doesn't deserve to sit in the front row or any seat at a wrestling show, because there's no place in life for that.
Yeah.
But wrestling is being built on having heat with fans. I think if that same fan had thrown a comment to MJF, it'd have been the greatest thing ever. MJF would have real heat. And the whole thing would have been made differently.
Yep. I think that they got to be careful that we don't sanitize wrestling too much to not allow people to express themselves, even if it may go against the direction the company is trying to push somebody in.
Yep, no, I totally agree with you. Right, so my next question is, it's always one of the hardest questions. There's literally no right or no wrong answer. It's just your opinion. Your all-time Mount Rushmore of wrestlers.
Yeah, I've gotten that question before, and the way I look at the Mount Rushmore, which, by the way, you might notice I'm connecting this simply because I think that I might lose my connection on this one, so I'm just kind of preparing a backup. In case, because my battery is low, so I'm just preparing in the event that happens. We have a backup because professionalism.
My man.
So when it comes down to it, my Mount Rushmore, got to go with The Rock. Regardless of what anyone wants to say, the most successful person in the history of the wrestling business is The Rock, because he has made the most money. He is more well-known than anyone in wrestling, more well-known than Hogan, more well-known than Austin, more well-known than Bruno Sammartino, any of these other, Ric Flair. You got to go with The Rock because he transcends professional wrestling. So Rock, number one on the Mount Rushmore. Then I would say, as much as I don't agree with a lot of what he's done and a lot of things that he said, Hulk Hogan, because Hulk Hogan helped to elevate the wrestling business from regional territories to a worldwide phenomenon. As the old saying goes, you got to give the devil his due. Again, I'm not a fan of Hulk Hogan. I don't believe in what he stands for and a lot of the things that he said, but objectively, because these kinds of things should be objective, much like the WWE Hall of Fame should be objective. But then when you have people that, sue them because of concussion lawsuits, I guess their accolades and accomplishments don't mean anything. Or if someone maybe spilled coffee on Vince McMahon or something. But these things should be objective. So I'll say Hulk Hogan. Then I would say Steve Austin, because Steve Austin was on top at a time where wrestling was taken to its highest ratings. It was mainstream. Everybody was talking about it. Everyone wanted to be a part of it. People were literally watching Raw and Nitro, not because they liked wrestling, but because they didn't want to be left out of the loop when people were talking about it at the water cooler the next day. So Steve Austin, who was on top during that time. And the fourth one for me is always the hardest, but I would have to go with John Cena, because John Cena was on top for a very long time, had longer careers in WWE than Hogan and than Austin and Rock, probably longer than Hogan too. Longest tenured time, longest on top, helped the company through a time where there weren't really other people that were stepping up and carrying the ball and being able to do the same job as him, put in all the time, the work, the Make-A-Wishes, the appearances, the movies, everything he was able to do. The man was a workhorse of all workhorses. So I think John Cena would be the fourth one. So that would be my Mount Rushmore. Those four: Rock, Hogan, Austin, Cena.
Awesome. I always say it's like always one of my favorite questions, because you can put 4 people on it, think of another 10 people, but are then unable to take anybody off it, because why are you taking them off it? Because you've already put them on because of what they've done for wrestling. Absolutely love it. But
the only other one, if I could cut you off, the only other one for me that I have a hard time not including them, and this is someone I am a very big fan of, the person and the wrestler, is Ric Flair. And it's simply because of Ric Flair's longevity in the sport of professional wrestling. He was on top for so long, had such a long career. And to me, that's really impressive because, John Cena is pretty much done now. He didn't wrestle for as long as Ric Flair and wasn't on top for as long. Hogan, Rock, Austin, all the same things. Ric Flair's longevity in the sport of professional wrestling, Ric Flair's ability to have infiltrated the mainstream as well. You got the guys in rap and hip hop dropping Ric Flair references, LeBron James dropping Ric Flair references. I really think that it's a shame that for the actual business at the times where it peaked, Ric Flair was not that top person. But I do think that the notoriety that he achieved and the credibility that he brought to wrestling from the outside world, looking at a guy like Flair and saying, that's a professional wrestler, and doing the Flair strut, the woo, I got to give Ric Flair an honorable mention.
Yeah, again, yeah, it's like the hardest, but the most fun. So the next question, all-time favorite wrestling video game?
All-time favorite, it's got to be No Mercy. And I really feel like the games all stopped being good after No Mercy.
See, no, I never got to play No Mercy because I grew up as a Sega boy and then moved on to Sony. So No Mercy, as good as it is, bypassed me, unfortunately. But I had SmackDown 2. SmackDown 2 on the PS1 was the game I plugged the most hours into, like, ever.
Yeah, no, for me it was No Mercy. I love that game. The other one, it might surprise you, but my other choice for a game that I logged a lot of hours on, and it's one that I wish they would reuse the story mode system that they had for it, was Raw 2 on the original Xbox, because it was the only one that had a four-player story mode. And I could get with my friends and we could play it, and you could choose your actions, you could choose run-ins, promos, all those kinds of things. And I think it was a great concept. It was original, and it gave me a reason to get with my friends and play it for hours on end. And, you know, we're talking about who's going to run in this match, who's going to drop a box on this guy's head, who's going to be a champion, who's going to be the first one to win a championship. I think there were some bugs in the game, but overall, that 4-player multi-man story mode is something I wish that they would bring back.
See, now what I did was, me and my mates, I think there must have been like 7 or 8 of us. We would have like a monthly pay-per-view where, like, my mum and dad would know that the pay-per-view was happening because the front door would knock and it'd be a friend. And then 10 minutes later, the front door. So we'd all get there. But we kind of later on divided into like our own factions and started having wars, which actually spilled into school. And I remember the worst thing we did is we had this show coming up, and one of us fell asleep in like our school common room. So what we did was, to further this storyline, and I don't know what possessed us, is we tied his shoes together around the chair leg. And you know those metal dinner trays you get in the school cafeterias?
Yeah.
We absolutely whacked it right off his skull, like as hard as we could. But my God, his shoes were tied round the leg of the chair. And he got up and he went face first. And that actually, I honestly remember, that resulted in our school common room for our whole year, being shut.
Oh, wow.
Because wrestling was then like banned. We had to be given letters to say, you're not allowed to do wrestling. Wrestling is fake. We shouldn't like do it. It was a great time, but now everything's online.
Wow.
These moments seem to have gone, I believe.
See, if social media were around back then and you had a video of it, it would have totally gone viral.
Oh yeah, you're not wrong. I think at that point I had a Nokia 3310, which was one of the first Nokia phones. Right. So the next question is, all-time favorite wrestling theme song.
Whew. And I was very big into collecting wrestling theme songs. All-time favorite. That's one of the hard. I'm usually so good at answering so many questions. That's a hard one. Whew.
There's so many good ones.
Almost too many to name. All-time favorite. I have some obscure ones I might name here, because I always said, and it was one of the things when we used to create ourselves in the wrestling video games, in the later ones, I used to love using what was Billy Kidman's last entrance song.
Oh, yes.
The DMX sounding one. I used to love having that as my, because before you could, when you would have to put a song for your character, you'd have to use one that was already in the game. I would use that one. There have been so many good ones throughout the years. It's really hard. Like, I wouldn't say that one was my favorite, but I'm very big on entrance music. And I think that it's important to have a good song that sets the tone when you make your entrance, that matches your entrance. Like, I love the song that I use now. It's somewhat obscure, but it's called Haunted by the Marty Ray Project. Y'all can go on YouTube and check it out if you want. But it totally encompasses the message I'm trying to get across with everything and all the adversity that I face. All-time greatest. That's such a hard question. I can't reiterate that enough. I mean, there'll always be something to Bret Hart's song that he had in the last song in WWE in his first run before they changed it when he came back. It was just iconic with the siren and the guitar riffs. There was always something to Sting's song in WCW when he was pro. Just that simple like violin medley. There was just a power to it when the drums would kick in. WCW had a lot of great music, just a lot of great music, and so many different styles. I still listen to some of the Filthy Animals themes, some of the songs that Conan and did. I still listen to that to this day. It's not a lot of songs that I still listen to, but that finds its way into my rotation. Man, I'm trying to think of other ones I still listen to. Even some of the generic ones that they had, which were made by production companies, were really good. I would love when they would take a song and you see the song evolve, like Batista's song, for example. Like, I like the first version of Batista's song before Saliva redid it, which, you know, that was a great entrance song I found. I really liked even Triple H, like the evolution of his song. I'm not the biggest Triple H fan, but I loved when he had My Time. And even
that's my favorite. I was a huge Triple H mark. I loved his heel work back in 2000. That's always been my all-time favorite song for me personally.
Yeah, I loved actually, believe it or not, the one I loved the most was when he did had Motorhead do King of Kings. Loved that song. I think that one was perfect, and I love how he would use it when he wasn't wrestling, but would use the game when he would wrestle. But loved King of Kings. Man, and then there's like some obscure ones. Like, I was listening to the Corporate Ministry the other day, which I found like that was great how they fused No Chance in Hell with the Undertaker's theme. And just some that flew under the radar, like even the Ministry of Darkness, the song that I think the APA would use it, and Midian, that just had a good beat to it. Kurgan's song that he had with after the
oh my god, Kurgan's entrance music was so underrated. Kurgan, in fact, was just underrated.
Yeah, it was such a great song. And Kurgan himself was extremely underrated. I think they could have done a lot more with Kurgan when he was that character, when he was with the Jackal and he had the black and he's using the claw. Loved that character. And Kurgan, such a nice guy. I met him. Great guy, great talent, great human being. Like when I would see what they did with the Great Khali later on, because Kurgan kind of reminded me, Great Khali kind of reminded me of Kurgan, and like I was like to myself, they could have pushed Kurgan that same way, and he was a lot more talented than the Great Khali. I mean, I think at that point, just about everybody on the roster was more talented than Khali. But I think Kurgan could have had great programs with the Undertaker, with Kane, with all the big men they had. He could have been a great villain for The Rock and for Austin.
I feel that Kurgan was punished for the Jackal because I felt that he was putting himself over more than the talent he was actually managing. I mean, he was doing a great, fantastic job. I always felt that WWF didn't like that at the time. And Kurgan got the punishment as well.
See, I actually liked the Jackal. I liked, even as
I loved him. I thought it was fantastic.
Like, I thought he was outstanding on the mic. I think he's one of those people that, as a manager, he was ahead of his time on the mic. Kind of like Raven when Raven was Johnny Polo. Raven had some sick mic skills too. I'm a big fan of guys who know how to handle the microphone. And like Jackal, and especially when he was Cyrus in ECW, he was very entertaining. I just wish that Kurgan, when he was in that form, would have had the chance to go higher up the card, because they were building him as a monster. And then all of a sudden they decided to go with the oddities and Yeah, the oddities was all right, but I do think they weren't necessarily using him to his strengths.
No, I totally agree with you.
Oddities had they had some pretty good music too. I like ICP. I like when they were in WCW and they were paired up with Vampiro. He had a pretty good song in WCW too, Vampiro with ICP.
And Vampiro there is another hugely underrated guy in professional wrestling.
And a Canadian
that never got his full shot.
Yeah, and a Canadian. I had the chance to meet him a couple of times. Had some decent interactions and conversations with him. I could talk about wrestling. We could do a whole podcast on wrestling theme songs and from the best to the worst. Just a lot of great songs. One of my more recent mark out moments was when I got to wrestle Juventud Guerrera and he came out to his WCW music for his match with me. I think that was about 2 years ago. Yeah, I'm a little bit biased to the WCW. I think Jim Johnston was a great composer. Definitely leaps and bounds ahead of what they have now. But just about anyone. But I also like the stuff that Jimmy Hart made for WCW. I think that he was good at making a lot of diverse, different styles. Everything from Sting song like we talked about to 3 Count to the stuff that he did for Ernest the Cat Miller, Buff Bagwell.
And DDP was another one that had an absolutely amazing entrance.
DDP was outstanding. I loved how DDP and Raven both had Nirvana sounding songs. I thought that was outstanding.
And you know what? And I'm going to say it pisses me off because if you watch old WCW now, that DDP song is not on the WWE network because they wouldn't pay the license, and it really pisses me off.
Yeah, I think that might have to do with the fact that it's so similar to Smells Like Teen Spirit. I think there's a bit of a cease and desist on that one. But it's one thing that bothers me is that the music now in WWE, it all kind of sounds the same. And I really feel like when WWE stopped embracing rock and metal as their main style of music, the music just went downhill. Now everything is just radio, commercial, the Nicki Minaj's and Cardi B. Look, I'm sure there's a fan base for that kind of music, but for me, I think that wrestling's best years was when it embraced rock and metal.
Oh, absolutely. You just need to go back and look at the WrestleMania package for The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin with Limp Bizkit. It's like one of the most iconic videos you'll ever find in professional wrestling. And it was a height day of using rock and metal music in wrestling.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunate. Now it's like I rarely get hyped by any of their premium live event themes. I guess we can't call them pay-per-view themes anymore. But I couldn't even tell you what the last couple of ones were because they're just not memorable and they're not the kind of music that would hype me for wrestling. I can't imagine.
You don't get the iconic openings anymore. You don't get the iconic theme songs. Everything I think it's almost like watching an extended episode of Raw or SmackDown. And a lot of the time, these premium live events, they don't work. It's because it feels like you're watching a Raw or a SmackDown.
Yeah, I'm very outspoken about that. But to me, and I've said it in many interviews, I feel like one of the most telling comments I heard was on the Ruthless Aggression series when they talked about how on SmackDown, you had that time where they had the SmackDown 6, where you had Los Guerreros, Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle, and Edge and Rey Mysterio. And they said we could take any combination of these guys, put them out there. This is from Bruce Pritchard himself, who still writes the show. Take any combination of these guys, put them out there, say, hey, do a 30-minute match. And that was a quarter of the show that we didn't have to write. And to me, I can't unsee that in watching Raw, where they'll just send people out to do these 2-3 segment matches. And that is because instead of wanting to write creative stuff, instead of wanting to write character progression and things that will actually make people want to watch the premium live event, they just say, go out and wrestle. And the wrestling has become filler on these programs. Just long matches, no stakes, just 2 people wrestling that you've probably seen wrestle 5 times throughout the year already. See, I had a backup plan.
And we're back.
Yeah. So, like I was saying, they use the wrestling as filler. And it's unfortunate because you shouldn't be just giving away these long matches on TV. You should make people want to see the long match at the premium live event. But by the time that rolls around, you've seen this person in the, I'm teaming with this guy, feuding against that guy, and who's teaming with the guy that I'm feuding with kind of matches. You'll see them have singles matches that end in disqualifications. You'll see, or a run-in. You see the same formula over and over to the point that the match gets watered down by the time the premium live event rolls around. And now it's not special. It's like you said, it's an extension of what you see on Raw or on SmackDown. You don't get that first time encounter. I want to see this babyface get his hands on this heel. Unfortunately, that's not the way they structure it. They just use these matches as filler. They're too long, and they take away from time that could be used for character development and selling the premium live event.
See, for me, the best example I can give. Now, I love The Simpsons. I do not love The Simpsons movie. The Simpsons movie is watching a very long episode of The Simpsons. It does not feel like a movie. And I kind of feel unless it's the Royal Rumble or WrestleMania, the rest of the live premium events just feel that same way. It is just an extra Raw with a couple of title matches. Maybe a title change.
I wholeheartedly agree. That's unfortunately the problem, is that to me, back in the day when we were fans growing up watching this, those pay-per-views were a buildup, an accumulation of ongoing storylines. People who had rivalries, and you finally just wanted to see the match. And that's what's great about combat sports. I'm as big of a UFC fan as I am a wrestling fan. And what's great about combat sports is that you don't see fights that often. You'll see a great fighter fight maybe 3 times, 4 times at most in a year, but you already know who they're paired up against on the next event. So then they build it up. They have interviews back and forth, video packages, all these things that build up the anticipation to make you want to see it. Nowadays, everyone has more or less fought everybody because they give away these matches and think that the average wrestling fan doesn't have, that the average wrestling fan has the memory of a goldfish, and it's not special. It's a lot of the same storylines being reused, a lot of the same rivalries. And I think that a lot of times to me, it just comes across like they're treading water. They're just kind of trying to survive until we get to WrestleMania. Just filler until we're on the road to WrestleMania, until the Rumble happens, until it's Mania, until it's SummerSlam. And then everything that happens in between is kind of meaningless.
I totally agree. So to end this next question, I've dropped my paper. I am basically going to give you some wrestling promotions, some past, some present. You're going to tell me your dream opponent from each promotion. So the first promotion, WCW.
My 2 favorites in WCW that I would have loved to work with, Sting. Always was a fan of Sting in WCW. Sting and Diamond Dallas Page. They were my 2 guys in WCW. I don't even know which one I liked more. To me, they were the 2 best when I watched. I loved Sting. I loved even from Surfer Sting, as they call him, right through to the end. I didn't even mind when they turned Sting heel, man. Sting could do no wrong in my book. Absolutely love Sting. And DDP, just to me, he will always be the real people's champion. I don't care what anyone says about The Rock. The Rock took that moniker. It was another one of his many names in a long line of, he was the great one and all these kinds of things. But to me, DDP was the people's champion because he was the working man. He was the guy who had to work for his success and managed to go all the way up the card. I personally don't think that when he won the WCW title, it was in his best form. He won it as a heel, and then they started this heel turn that felt very forced. To me, DDP should have never been a heel. I love the Jersey Triad, because I was a big fan of Chris Kanyon, and I like Bam Bam too from his run in the WWF with Luna. But I mean, to me, DDP should have been like the Ricky Steamboat of WCW. He should have been their top baby face and just never turned heel. I actually think DDP could have been the one to end Goldberg's streak. He was
no, I totally agree with you. Goldberg, the end of Goldberg's streak was the biggest bullshit ever. I'm just going for it. It was absolute bullshit. I totally agree with you. I think at Halloween Havoc, DDP should have been the one that broke it.
Yeah, I was a big DDP fan. I remember when I was playing hockey at the time, before I was a wrestler, I was playing hockey, and like I'd score a goal and I'd throw up the diamond and do the bang. That was my thing when I'd score a goal. Just such a big fan of DDP. I think I started wearing those bright blue jeans because DDP would wear them and wrestle in them. And I remember playing the video games, and he was my go-to guy. DDP and Sting were my two favorites in WCW, and I would have loved to work with either of them. But also, again, maybe I'm being long-winded with my answers here, but I think of also the cruiserweight division in WCW, and I'm kind of a guy who falls between. I'm kind of between cruiserweight and heavyweight. Like I would be like a middleweight or a light heavyweight. I'd be like a light heavyweight by combat sports definition. I'm like right between the two. One of the reasons why I feel like I'm so good at doing a lot of things is because half my matches I'm the big guy, half the matches I'm the small guy. So I got to know how to do a lot more than a guy who kind of falls into one of those categories only. But a lot of guys in the cruiserweight division I would have loved to mix it up with. A lot of the luchadors, like, I got the chance to wrestle Rey Mysterio. I got the chance to wrestle Juventud Guerrera. Would have loved to wrestle Chris Jericho and still hope to be able to wrestle Chris Jericho.
I mean, that can happen one day.
I think it'll still happen. Yeah, I mean, I won his Jericho Award in 2020, or in 2021, and so he knows who I am, and he knows that if we got in a ring together, as much as he's a veteran, he's a very tough guy. I'm a young lion, who wouldn't hesitate to tear him limb from limb, beat the brakes off of that man. But give the people something that they'd enjoy seeing as well. But Jericho, like I said, love the cruiserweights, even the luchadors like Psychosis, like I love La Parca, all kinds of guys through the mid card. Chris Benoit, I think I could have had a wonderful match with Chris Benoit or Brian Pillman. Just a lot of love for WCW on my end. So it's hard to choose one, but DDP Sting, that'd be where it's at.
That's amazing. Yeah, and it's another whole podcast you can do, because it's like on DDP, it's like one of the biggest mistakes I think WWE ever made was not having People's Champion versus People's Champion.
Yeah.
But what we got was DDP stalking Sarah, and I was like, sure.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, and it's I think I was actually the first one, because I interviewed DDP. This was back in, I think, 2010, 2011, around then, on my radio wrestling show I had on TSN Radio. Interviewed DDP about that. He was kind enough to come on, talk with us for like 2 hours, maybe even more. Probably the one guy who talks more than me, but was so kind and gracious to tell us a lot of these stories. And he told us how he always wanted that. He always wanted to debut with Rock in the ring and the lights go out and it to say, who's the real People's Champion? And that, I think that match would have been money, because DDP, he was like the heart and soul of WCW.
I got to interview DDP last year myself, and he briefly spoke about that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest with you. I think you can out-talk DDP. I think we could have some sort of gimmick match of who could out-talk. I mean, I don't know how we book it, but I think we could do something to see who could out-talk the other.
Well, do you mean out-talk in the sense of I talk more than him, or do you think out-talk as in like dissing him on the mic?
I think you talk more than DDP, and DDP is very difficult. That's so difficult to beat DDP in it. So you should be proud of yourself. That's an accomplishment, and I mean that in the best way possible.
I'll take it. I'll take it. I think maybe he slowed down in his old age, because I know that interview that I had with him, that is more than 10 years ago. So he was still more in his prime. I think maybe he just kind of calmed down. Maybe he became a little bit more zen and namaste with the yoga.
No, I don't know. He still thinks he's in his 40s. I mean, I love DDP, but I don't think in his mind that age has caught up with him yet. I think if he didn't have the injuries, I think we could still have another DDP run. But that's a whole nother conversation for another time.
I may reach out to him, maybe see if we'll get him on Jofo in the ring.
Right. So the next question is WWE. Current WWE roster, who are you picking?
Current, that's an easy one. AJ Styles, without a doubt. I think that he's the best right now. AJ's the guy who would lay claim to, as Bret Hart would say, the best there is. I think he's the best in WWE. I would love to have a match with him. So I think the work rate would be outstanding. But in the business of wrestling, there's no one bigger in WWE right now than Roman Reigns. So he'd be on my hit
it's
list.
the big money match.
Yeah, you have to be Roman. He's the Universal Champion. He's the supposed big dog. So he's who I'd want to sink my fangs into. We'd see how the big dog does against a young, aggressive wolf. And we know what happens when wolves and dogs do battle. The dog don't usually walk out of there with his life still intact.
Exactly. Next promotion, All Elite Wrestling.
AEW. So I guess I'd have to say the champ for the same reasons. But
Hangman Page.
I'd have to say the champ for those same reasons, but taking him out of the equation, gotta again go with Chris Jericho. I think that he's still the biggest star in AEW. He's the one that always knows how to put the most spotlight on what he's doing at that time. And I think that our styles just match up so perfectly. I think that, a lot of what I do is very similar to what he does. I put my own spin on it. He's been doing a lot of the same things for a lot longer, but he's also a lot older than me. But I do think that on the mic and in the ring, it could make for a very, very entertaining program.
I totally agree. So I want to take this time to say thank you so much for coming on. This has been an absolute blast. We're somehow going to get Mick Foley to come and do an interview with both of us. I don't care how we do it. That's going to happen. I'd love to see you on in the future for something again. I can't wait to see what you do this year and beyond. You've had a fantastic career so far, and it's only the beginning. I wish you all the best going forward.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And like I always say, the best is yet to come. I think I just keep getting better and better each year. It's been 16 years of doing this at the top of my abilities, never taken a step back. And one of the things I'm most proud about is I've done it for 16 years, and I've only taken days off because there weren't bookings. If I could wrestle every day, I would do it. I try to wrestle as much as possible. Rarely have ever turned down a booking, never missed a booking, never been injured. I've never had a surgery, never tore a ligament, never broke a bone, never had a concussion. My brain and all my faculties fully intact. Whether it's because I've been blessed by the grace of God or because I'm just built for this, I've been fortunate to never be injured. I'm fully 100% absolutely fit and natural. No steroids, no performance enhancing drugs, nothing like that. 100% natural, just hard work, eating right, day in, day out. And yeah, I'm dedicated to doing this to the highest I can. I want to make my living doing this. I want to become ridiculously rich. And if I happen to get famous in the process, all the better. But no, I have a definite, strong, aggressive bloodlust to be at my rightful place in this business, to be one of the top wrestlers in the world and leave my mark on this so that people like yourself can see themselves in my story, to see that you helped along the way when they released the Netflix documentary of the Jeremy Prophet story. We can use this footage and throw it in there. That's why I say it in a lot of things, because I know it'll happen. I'll speak it into existence. But no, I'm not one of these guys who's just going to be happy to have done professional wrestling. I want to do it at the highest level possible. I believe I have the skills. I would put my skill set up against everybody. I have no insecurities. I am not short on confidence because I know that I've worked hard enough to have these skills and to be able to deliver. With that said, if you want to follow my journey, you can
I will
find me on
certainly
Twitter.
follow you, Johnny.
Yeah, I knew it was coming. I was just going to take the initiative there. You can follow me on Twitter at Jeremy Prophet. That's JeremyProphet. You can find me on Instagram at The Real Jeremy Prophet, spelled exactly the same way. And you can see me on Jofo in the Ring on YouTube. Go check out our page, subscribe to our channel. It only takes a few seconds. And, we get enough followers. It'll help us have a nice little decent budget to be able to have entertaining guests on there, do greater episodes, do a lot of good things. So, just take the time, go on there, subscribe to the channel, and you'll be able to see a lot more of me, be able to follow my journey. And also don't forget to vote for me in Wrestling Academy. You can go check out the site. So it's wrestling-academy.ca. You can see my profile on there, see my highlight video, and follow my journey. That's going to take me from here to where I want to be. And don't forget, I will remember each and every person along the way. I'm proud to be a self-made man, but let's face it, in this business, no one's self-made because we need the fans. We need the people supporting us. So you want to get on this bandwagon before it leaves the station? We got a lot of room still left. Every bit counts. Every supporter is appreciated. And at the end of the day, no matter where you see me, whether it's in an interview or in the ring, I always want to make sure that the people get what they want. That's the Jeremy Prophet way. And that's
absolutely the truth. And as always, for anybody watching, remember to subscribe, comment, like, hit Jeremy up on all his social media, follow his journey, and also don't forget, as always, the very first issue of the One Stop Wrestling magazine is now on sale on onestopwrestling.com, featuring Bianca Belair, the most iconic image of 2021. Thank you, Jeremy. Have a great day.
Thank you. You as well, Craig. Been a pleasure.